2 fights in, 2 fights to go in the fight card rounds. Brett has walked you through all the damage from our first 2 battles versus Ribot and Fusion in our past episodes. But how do we repair Witch Doctor and get it back in the BattleBox after all that damage? I'm Andrea Galately, captain of Team Witch Doctor, and I'm going to show you how we go from this back to this. Let's start by breaking things down into subsystems. We have drive, self-rider, weapon, electronics, and our frame. Now we just need a rating system. Our team has gotten in the habit of yelling "woo" with a rock-on hand symbol to celebrate small victories and to pump each other up. So our rating system will be 1 to 5 woos. First up is drive. While we're still using our trusty mag motors for drive, we did switch away from our usual gearboxes in favor of extra chain reduction stages. So we'll start at 4 woos due to some untested components. We walked away with no noticeable drive damage or issues from our Ribot fight. It was a great first test. Aside from our regular teardown and reassembly, no major red flags heading into the Fusion fight, so we'll start at 5 woos. After the match, I'll give it 4 woos. I know, it looks worse than that, but hear me out. The drive did well given the abuse it took. Yes, one wheel was completely toast, but it didn't lock up or impede the remaining wheels, and Witch Doctor was still able to drive around. The other wheels do have some damage, but they're usable in a pinch, so we'll throw them in our questionable spares pile. We didn't use the self-rider in our fight with Ribot, but during the teardown we did find that a set screw had loosened up. A great catch by the team that could have cost us our next battle where we did need it against Fusion. 5 pre-match woos, and post-match I'll give it 4. Maybe 4.5. Through no fault of its own, the self-rider had much of it hacked away to make weight for the Fusion fight. So we'll give it 4 woos to start. It still got the job done during the fight, and now we have a lower weight option in case we need it later on. So it ends at 5 woos. Okay, time to talk about the weapon. Our new weapon setup worked well in its first debut fight, and it got us the knockout. But we still have some issues to figure out. We'll start at 4 woos due to all the uncertainty on the new weapon system, but it's down to 3 woos after seeing some new issues surface. First of all, we lost the weapon belt. From the way that it broke, it doesn't seem to have been hit directly. We'll note a red flag here, but let's give it another fight to see if it was just a one-time thing. Next, we lost some front wedge hardware. Normally this isn't a big deal, and those front pods on Witch Doctor have been open in the past, ever since our fight against Red Devil back in Season 2, so the backside of the hardware just falls out of the robot. Doesn't really sound like a weapon issue, right? The difference is that this year, we put our new weapon motors in that space and closed it up to protect the motors. What we hadn't realized was that now, if any of the wedge hardware shears, it's trapped in there with the spinning motor. It didn't cause an issue this time, but it's a problem waiting to happen. Mike suggested that we helicoil the frame, which adds threads to retain any shear bolts in the frame instead of falling behind it. It's a clever solution, and this issue is solved before it really becomes a problem. Fusion marks the second battle under our belt with the new weapon system, and some more lessons learned. We lost another weapon belt in a similar way, so now it's time to dive deeper into this issue. We only have 1 weapon belt for motor due to space constraints this year, so a lost belt has major implications. There are a few plausible causes here. 1. The extra weapon power is just too much for this size belt. Or maybe the pulley geometry or the belt tension just isn't allowing the belts to slip enough and it's pulling them apart. When we were still back home, we realized that the belt tension was too tight and we sent the pulleys back out to get remachined. Maybe they're still too tight? Both of these plausible causes are difficult to prove and even more difficult to remedy in the pits between matches. If this continues to be a recurring issue though, it could cost us our whole season. If we lose one belt, it puts double the strain on the other motor, which is going to cause other issues. While the team is discussing possible solutions to this problem, Mike takes another look at the pulleys and notices something interesting. When they were remachined, it looks like they were milled instead of turned. This resulted in a different finish than we're used to, with distinct, tiny steps in the surface. What if that surface texture is destroying the belts when they run at such a high speed? Before taking any more drastic action on the other plausible causes, We decide to sand down the pulleys to make sure the surface is nice and smooth. We'll try out this theory in our next battle versus Gruff. What better test than one of the most rugged robots in the sport? Okay, now let's talk electronics. Look at the social media feed for any BattleBots team transitioning to brushless, Kraken and Whiplash for example, and you'll see the same journey. The tool that we use to program our controllers, called VESC tool, has hundreds of settings. The right settings will unlock a whole new level of weapon effectiveness. The wrong settings can set your expensive electronics on fire. Trust me, we found those settings in testing. We'll start at 4 woos here, since our off-season testing was pretty promising. We spent lots of time on the bench and in the test box at BattleBots, trying to confirm that both weapon motors would behave as anticipated. We got the weapon working well.
I think the radio's not connecting again, so we're opening it up again to try and see what's going on.
So it's consistently being inconsistent.
Right.
But then we started having intermittent receiver issues.
What happened? Receiver? Same thing we had earlier.
We were so close to our match with Ribot that we were troubleshooting outside, between the tents, half in costume. No obvious issues that we could see. The distance between the receiver and the transmitter didn't seem to make a difference. We put fresh batteries in the transmitter. We went as far as to check the individual pins on the PWM cables to the receivers.
Well, we can swap another one, swap that one out right now. Try that.
I'm going to give you the questionable one.
With time running out, we put in a new receiver and that seemed to work. But that's the thing with intermittent issues. They're intermittent, so you're never quite sure you fixed it.
So both of the receivers work now.
They do. We don't know exactly why. Like, we switched out the receiver and it fixed the problem, but we'd rather know what the problem specifically was. But we're out of time and it works. So we're rushing back to change and it's robot fighting time.
It seemed to work throughout the battle, but we'll keep it at 4 woos since we're not exactly sure we solved the issue. So far, no receiver issues in the battle box. Last up is the frame. Although our frame looked great after our first battle with Ribot, we definitely had frame damage and deformation following our fusion fight. A big change this year is that we know all 4 fight card fights at the start of the season. We know we're headed to a heavy hitting fight with Minotaur for our 4th matchup, and we can't afford to damage a second frame like this in the fight cards.
I think it's usable from here back.
So instead of using up all our spares to get this frame back in tip-top shape, we're going to get it back in good working order while reusing as much as possible.
If we use this robot for Gruff, we'll probably be able to repair it and use it for Minotaur. But then the top 32 starts the next day, so it's just having both robots, because if we fight Minotaur, we very well could trash a whole frame, so we'll have the second robot ready for that. And we'll make sure to put the worst robot frame-wise in for Minotaur, expecting that. Like, we actually put in, after our first fight with Ribot, our weapon disc was pretty damaged, and we purposefully kept it because we knew it was just going to get more damage now. And it was the right thing to do because now that weapon disc is trash, but we didn't, damage the new disc for that.
With the damage repaired from our first 2 fights, it's time to talk strategy for our battle against Gruff. Tune in next week to see how we configure Witch Doctor to take on this tank of a bot. Will our repair stand the ultimate test? Or will we go up in a ball of flames, courtesy of Gruff? Find out next time on Pit Pass. Want to own a piece of Witch Doctor from our epic battle with Fusion? Check out the description for details. Missed out? We usually have some battle damage parts available on our team store, along with some awesome merch. Make sure to check it out.